So I use this bucket as a holder for my bag. It makes it really convenient to handle, but when I put them on top of each other, it leaves a space for my bag in between each bucket. And it helps really for the flow. So I use only 3 bags, sometimes 4, and I explain why. I use the 45 as my main bag. My full spectrum is 45 to 160. So my catch bag is at the bottom. Then the second size, it's for my 160. 160, like I explained, it's a little bit harder to separate contaminant from resin because they're basically the same size. So it becomes really difficult to actually separate them by size. But often you have really great quality. So great that I feel guilty sometimes and I have to share it with my farmer and not keep it for my stash. And the smallest bucket, which is somewhere like around 4 inches, on the top for my 190. But sometimes when you work with sun-grown plant and certain genetic, you have really seriously big resin head. So sometimes on top of this, I use my 220. I use it at least one time to see if there is anything interesting coming in my 190. If it doesn't, if there is nothing, I just take the 220 off, and my catch bag become my 190. So it's really important to have that flow of water and not have your water sitting and all your bag on top of each other in a big pool of water. You usually lose a lot because when you take your bag off, to clean the inside, everything that is on the outside is going to be lost if you're not really careful to rinse that into over your bag. And it makes it really easy to handle, to clean, to rinse. It's like it's a frame, literally, for something that is loose. And because I really, truly use all the surface of my, and then I use really truly all the surface of my bag as a sieve, as a tool, instead of having just the bottom. I facilitate the flow of water, and by doing that, I fine-tune and I got an advantage on my sieving just by the gravity and the water flowing through it. So I use a frisbee to stretch my bag to take the resin out. It's not usual. I use a butter knife, very dull. Tweezer, important. Another little knife to clean the bigger one. I use a Pyrex for the jumper, and I collect the resin in that little 25 micron handkerchief. And I always have 99% pure alcohol to wash my bag, to wash my tool, because like I explained before, the sieve is a tool made of perforation. If those perforations are not totally clean, you're not sieving anymore. This is not only to collect the resin. This is the other half of the process. Here you have the agitation, and here we do the sieving. We separate contaminant and resin. And it's really important to keep those bags absolutely clean after every wash. That's why I have that the alcohol. So as explained earlier, it's not really a question of running just trim or nugs, or full plant, or whole plant. It's really a question of resin ripeness. And it's very difficult to judge the ripeness of the resin before we actually dry it. So it's really important to understand your trim, because the quality of your trim is going to define truly the way you work in the machine. For example, the rehydration is so important that you have to be really careful to do it to the optimum. And a bud dense will not rehydrate the same than a bud loose. Or a thick leaf of indica will take longer to rehydrate than a thin leaf of a sativa type plant. And also it defines a little bit the power you're going to apply to shake the resin head from their stalk. So here we are working with buds. This is double cherry lime from Minjin Aficionado, grown by Stay Splifted. Here you can really understand that to rehydrate this will take much longer than to rehydrate that. The rehydration time is somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes. It's very difficult to judge by just by looking at it. The best way, after 10-15 minutes, it's to pick down and check the rehydration. If there is any brittleness still in your trim, you want to wait a little longer. So I always put a little ice at the bottom of the machine because of the stickiness of the resin. I want the bottom to be really cold so that even if the resin is sticky, there is no trim that can be stuck between the turning plate and the frame of the machine. Sometimes it literally jams the turning plate, and then you have to go and dig down with your arm in ice cold water. It's not really nice. Just that little bit of ice will make it so that it never really stuck at the bottom. You usually don't forget it often. You're going to forget it once, and then you will really remember it. And I do the same with the big machine. And also the trim like that are in between two masses of ice, so it really gets nice and cold. Like I say, the cold is really to take care of the main characteristic of the resin. Resin is sticky. By working in a cold condition, we can work with the best ability that the resin is not going to stick to the material or to the machine. Now we're going to load the machine with trim. So I'm going to use the same trim in both machines to show really the difference between the two. When you work with buds, you have to be really careful that once they're all broken up, they're going to take much more space than what you see when you load the machine. That little machine takes an average of 300 grams. 300 grams, you're really in a safe zone. It would be very difficult to create contaminant if you don't really put a lot of ice to crush and damage your trim. And in this one, I can put 3 times the amount. I put a little over 3 times. I can put basically a kilo of trim in. It's a shame that you can't smell it, which is interesting sometimes. The trim are not smelling at all. Even when you break the bud, there is no smell coming. But as soon as it stays a little bit in the water, the terpenes are going to come out. I'm not sure the reason behind, but it really indicates quality where it was very, very difficult to see. So water brings something to the whole operation outside being a medium where you work in. And now I'm gonna load a layer of ice over both. This machine, I need to put a heavy layer of ice so that when I fill up the machine, the trim really all stay underwater and rehydrate at the same level. It's very important to have everything totally rehydrated perfectly and evenly. My first wash, I have so much ice that I cannot really run it because I would crush the material. So when I made up that machine, I find a way I need ice on top, but I want to have just enough so that I can work. It's all a question of ratio. You need a lot of water to have the power of the vortex to the maximum. You want just the right amount of trim, very, very little ice, and your timing, the length of your cycle is the last part of the ratio. And that's the only thing that you have to play around to get to perfection. It's quite simple. It just takes a little experience, and you need to know your machine well, basically. So this machine, I had a top created so that it weighed down for me all the trim underwater, doesn't matter what. You see how the trim stay well underwater like that? And it's very important. So in this machine, my ratio is even more important than in this one because I cannot change the speed and the power. So the more I put in the machine, the least power I have coming from that vortex. And it's that current of water that really shakes the resin head from the stock. So you really want as much water as possible to be able to have the maximum power. You want it really powerful and very gentle at the same time. Here, because I can play around with the power of my vortex, doesn't matter how much I put in a machine, may it be 300 grams like here or a kilo like here, depending on the amount of water and amount of trim I have in my machine, I can fine-tune my power. Et voilà, we're going to let that rehydrate for somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes. Okay, so let's check if we're getting close. So I take a bud. There is a little brittleness to it still in the inside. You can see the difference of color. It's in the feel. It's more by the color, but by the feel, you know it's not quite totally rehydrated. And it's super important that it's absolutely rehydrated. If it's brittle, you create contaminant and you lose one of the main advantages of water. The bigger leaves are soft, but the inside of the bud is not. Bud takes longer, especially when they're a little bit dense like this. But I don't want to break those buds because if I break them dry, I create contaminant. So I prefer to have the water, the power of the water doing this for me. It will, and it will not create any contaminant while it does that. Since the two machines have the same type of flour, I'm pretty sure the other one is not perfectly ready yet. This machine, for beginner, it's really good. The only thing, you really need to keep it very, very, very clean. To wash it after every day of work and have at least a weekly heavy-duty, full alcohol cleaning. And still, it's not going to be perfectly clean. So if you do that for you or between friends, it's an amazing machine, and you can make quite a bundle of ash every day. If you want to go commercial, we don't have the choice. We need to work with stainless steel. And stainless steel gives you a lot of advantage. It retains the cold. When you work with live resin, there is very little chance for the resin to stick to the metal, while it sticks hard on a plastic. Like, there is a lot of advantage. And there were no choice anyway. Okay, so those machines do not come with that type of tubing. It's a kind of accordion type of hose that hook up here. And when it hook up here, you have to use much less water, otherwise the water spill over. And every one of the groove of that accordion type tubing collect a lot of resin and a lot of contaminant. And after a while, it gets really dirty, and you don't really want that because it reflects on your product. So I bought that type of tubing. It's a 3/4, and I use an elbow with a closing tip as an ending. You want that first part to be long enough. Then I have another elbow that fits here at the bottom, and I cut an inch or so to connect to the aperture that is the other hose was glued to. It's better to use some clamp also. And like this, you have a nice flow, and it will get dirty. The best way is to change it, and you just clean your elbow and your closing tip in alcohol. And you will change that maybe every month or so, depending how much you use the machine. It makes the machine much more efficient just because you can use a gallon more water, basically, and that's huge. The only thing that can break it down and create contaminant is the ice, the amount of ice. The ice is literally your nemesis, your enemy. You need the water to be really cold so that you can deal with the stickiness of the resin, but you don't want ice, literally. If you can avoid it and work with ice-cold water or shaved ice or snow, it will be much better, and you will have a much cleaner material all the way. Or you have to be very careful to use the minimum ice. That the ice is only there to keep the water at that cold level. And since you run really short burst of time, it's quite easy to control it. I like those little washing machine. For learning, it's really perfect because everything is in the ratio inside the machine. So you really want the maximum water, the minimum ice, and not a too big amount of trim. And right now, it looks very small because it's bud. All those buds are going to be opened up and all broken by the power of the water. We will have a lot more material in the machine after all. And it goes for both machines, except that this one, I can put more power into my vortex. So it doesn't matter the amount of water, ice, and material I have, I can compensate always. I can work with very small load, and I can load it to the maximum, working in exactly the same condition. And to have the power to fine-tune the vortex, it's a huge advantage because then you have the time, and the power, so that when I shake my tree to get the different dimension of ripeness, I could use the same time but shake a little bit harder every time, or I can shake a little bit harder every time and a little bit longer too. And the power I apply and the length of time define what I collect. So if I want really thin slice of all those dimensions of ripeness of the resin, I'm gonna go with a short time and little power. If I want to shake the tree violently and have everything falling down, or have a bigger dimension of ripeness coming down to me, I just have to apply a little bit longer the same power. So it's really the perfect tool. Literally everything, all my knowledge is inside that machine, because the tool really is defined by the product, by the material I work with, by the resin head. I never had that scientific knowledge before, but now that I have it, I could make tools that are much more adapted to the actual characteristic and of the resin than the tool I used during all those travel I had. It's like I knew the tool, but the tool were from third world country, and there were no real knowledge behind the tool, because there were little knowledge of the resin head, or if the knowledge was there, it's an intrinsic knowledge that the people can't really give you. So for me to be able to discover the science behind the formation of the resin head and the ripeness, and discovering that actually it's like a fruit, has changed my game. Now I can really work my way around and pick up exactly what I want from that plant in a way I want. It's an amazing tool. Okay, so let's check again. Much better, like we're almost there. I'm gonna let it run. It's very, very, very soft. It's a feel, it's not brittle anymore. It's really like supple and spongy, like it's full of water. It's something that cannot create small contaminants. It's totally rehydrated, saturated with water. So now here, I handicap myself because I have so much ice in this machine to keep the trim underwater. So my first wash is mandatory very, very short. But at the same time, that's my first shake of the tree. So I want a short shake so that only the ripest fruit, ripest resin head are going to fall. Okay? That sound of the ice, it's not as bad as it usually is, because it's a little warm around us. So it's like, it doesn't really have a grinding sound. But still, I want to keep it short because it's still on the border limit. The sound of the ice in a machine are very much the clue for you of your ratio. When you have a grrr type of sound, you have definitely too much ice. When you have only a clink, clink, clink that you hear only a few ice cubes hitting the machine wall and floating around, you know that your water is ice cold. Then as soon as you don't hear that little clink, 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 you just add a little handful of ice so that the water stay really stably cold. Because again, it's not the ice that shakes the resin head from the stock. It's the current of the water, nothing else. The color of the water is quite important. You want it cloudy, but you don't want it full of contaminants. You don't want a kind of mushy, greenish color coming out. And what you find in your bag is very much a clue of the intensity you put in a machine. So because it's full bud, I have very little in my bag because I have been so gentle for the moment, I didn't break those bud into smaller and smaller pieces. Later on, you will see I have more green coming into my work bag, but it will never be a huge quantity. And slowly, slowly, it would get bigger and bigger going towards the end where everything is totally open up and I have a lot more small piece of material. Okay, while I'll do that, I'm gonna run the other machine. And here, because I have much less ice, I'm gonna run it for 5 minutes, but with not that much power, like somewhere around 200 RPM. So as you can see, it's a very, very, very gentle at the beginning. So gentle that it takes a while before I start really moving the top level. And here I'm really shaking just what's on the outside of the machine. I could do a little bit more though. This is 300 RPM and the machine goes to 1700. But even at 1700, it's gentle. The first time we tried it, we tried 1700 for 45 minutes and the trim came really like, wow. It's really hard to make mistake with that machine. So I fill up the machine again, and all the extra ice that were a little bit dangerous for me on my first wash, now most of it has melted to get my water to the temperature I want. So now I work in a better condition. Instead of having such a short burst, I'm gonna run the machine for 3 minutes. And you can hear the sound already of the ice is much less aggressive. The least ice you have, also the more space for the water and the trim, the more power for your vortex. Now let's see your bag. So I just want to do a quick rinse of my 190. If there is any resin edge stuck in it, it will go to the inside my 160. When you take your bag and you put it somewhere, you need to work in very clean condition because if there is any dirt sitting on the back of your bags, when you're going to bring it back and put it on a bag where you collect the resin, you're going to contaminate that bag. So it's really important to always put your bag on a surface that is totally clean. Now this is my 160. That's the biggest resin head, and it's often a pretty good indicator of quality and ripeness. The more you have in your 160, the happier normally you should be. I rinse it with a flat setting of my hose, so that I have a flat surface that moves the resin around the surface of my tool, of my sieve, and do the separation. It's very much like carding, but without any sharp edge. The water will never really damage the membrane of the resin, and the material is supple, so it's basically like doing it on a trampolino. Since there is so little resin in my 160, I usually do not collect it every time. I collect it at the end. I just make sure that it's always clean. And again, I put it on a surface, a clean surface, and you always want to cover the bag that where you collect, because if there is something floating in the air, it's going to finish in your bag. So as a security, you always put your catch bag on top of it. And now we get to the heart of the matter. The 45 to 160 micron. So I basically do the same. So as you can see, when you have a clean agitation in your machine, the second part of the process, the separation is very easy. I really literally use my fan it around to be sure that everything that is smaller than 45 goes out in my water. That water goes to a 25 micron bags. It's a 25 micron, it's not really good for us ash maker, but there is precursor cannabinoid of the THC and the CBD that are pretty important for people who do extraction. So I'm keeping that for a company that does that. Here I'm going to show you how I prepare my patchy for the freeze dryer. Later on, I'll show you how I prepare my resin for the drying room. So for the dry freezer, I keep quite a lot of water because the process of sublimation needs it, and it helped me also make my little patchy easier. So I come to my Pyrex. So I open my bag. I slide the frisbee under it, and I gently open it. You want to open it over your Pyrex because there is always jumper. And I stretch it tight like that. I use my butter knife. It's so dull, you cannot cut butter with that one. So you see here, there is still a lot of resin that is left. When it's really sticky, you have no choice but to wash it in a machine. This one is border limit. And when I wash it into alcohol, it becomes iso oil, which is a medicine. It's nice, but I prefer to keep as much resin as in ash form than in oil form. So there is another way to clean your bag and to have all those perforations absolutely clean. Any perforation that is plugged, it's an handicap to the most important part of what you do, the separation of contaminant and resin. So you really cannot work with a bag that is dirty. So I'm going to use again the pressure. And I'm not really sure why, but the pressure and the elasticity of the bag makes the resin come up on the bag. And now my sieve is not plugged anymore. So, and as you can see, there was a lot of plugging. I leave it for the next one. Since technically speaking, your ripeness goes down, it cannot pollute the next dimension of ripeness. It just make it a little bit better. So
Now we're going to empty the other machine. So you can see the difference of water here. It's a tiny bit more cloudy, but still there is very little stream falling down in a bag. So you see here it's a little bit more material in a bag, but you can see that leaves are not destroyed. There is a lot of little air. So I want to show you how easy it is to clean this bag. And that's it. And this bag is as important, if not as any other, because everything goes through that one. If that one is plugged, you don't receive any other. So this is one of the most, your work bag, it's basically the most important to wash. Again, I just brush my 160 around. I do that over my 45 because it's clean. If it was not that clean, I wouldn't rinse it over the 45, otherwise you push contaminant also with the smaller size in your 45 bag that you're going to have to separate again. So usually when my 160 bag is not as clean as I want, I rinse it on the side, and that water goes to the 25 instead of going to the 45. You can see really how clean the resin is. When your agitation has been, you have the perfect ratio, there is nothing that can really create the contaminant. Your resin is going to be clean from A to Z. The perfect indicator of your cleanliness is actually the foam that you're creating. When the foam is the same color than the resin, it's clean. Otherwise, all the little contaminant green material goes into that foam, and you can chase it behind the sieve on a plastic frame, and it goes out. And you see all those little droplets, the amount of agitation that you can do with water, it's quite amazing. It's better than any vibration or anything like this. Which even give even more value to the ice water sieving tech. So I collect everything in the middle, and I'm gonna let the water slowly seep out before I collect. Let me show you how I make the little patty of the first wash, and we're gonna empty the second machine. So this is my first wash. So I'm gonna make a little patty of it, my first dimension of ripeness. Technically, the ripest that is on a plant, and technically the best, but sometimes you can find overripe also. Well, it's quite sticky, that's the good news. You can't really know the quality of your resin until you dry and press, but during the process there is hint of quality, and here I have one. When it's sticky here and it was a little sticky in the bag, I'm going to have to use the alcohol. It's very good news. But there is very dry resin that old quality. It's the stickiness apparent of the resin. It's not really a definition of quality. It defines more the characteristic of the resin. Simply, the sativa plant would have a lot more stickiness in a resin due to her habitat than a plant that grow in Hindu Kush where there is a lot of dust and wind. Because if the resin head becomes dusty and the whole process that the resin head do with the UV ray and all the characteristic of that resin head is going to be buffered by that layer of dust and powder, and so that the resin become drier, and you can literally recognize the type of species by the characteristic of the resin as much as you can see it in flowers. Okay, that's the patty of the first one. Now let's collect the second one. Same operation. I take just a little water out. I open it up. I put my little frisbee under it so that I can stretch the material over it. And here I have a problem. It's really sticky. I will lose quite a lot of resin. I wasn't careful enough to pull everything nicely in the middle because I wasn't expecting it to be that sticky. When it's really sticky, you want the minimum surface in your bag so that you lose the minimum. Once you finish that sieving, moving the resin seriously and powerfully around, with just the minimum of water, you let everything go toward the middle of the bag. It's not that it's lost, because that makes some very, very good oil. And I give it to people that don't have the money to pay for it. For me, it's literally a byproduct. It has value, but I may as well give it to people who are in need than try to make something out of it. I'm just a hash maker. I don't do oil. And now you just need to wash it really thoroughly before you reuse it, because you don't want your resin, when they touch the bag, to be dissolved by any alcohol remaining. Okay, and again here I make a patty. This is really nice and sticky resin. The darker shade of brown, it's because it's sun-grown, and they go into the deep amber color in the mountain, which is really valuable for us. We need total maturity of the resin gland to really work well. And here you're going to see why the tweezer is important. There is always little stuff to catch, and they are super difficult without it. So the freeze dryer really work on mass. You can dry fish, ice cream, meat, anything inside. So it works on a mass that contain water inside. That's why I keep as much water as I can in my patty, and I try to make them more or less the same thickness. They don't have to be the same size. They will never be the same size, because every layer, every dimension of ripeness has offered different quantity, but it will dry evenly if you have the same thickness. And when I'm finished with those little patty, I actually put them into a Beaker 25 micron sheet of material, and I keep it in the fridge until I have enough to actually fill up my dry freezer. So I use a towel. It is really just to contain and to have some type of breathing. And every time I make a patty, I directly put it here and straight up in the fridge. And it stays in the fridge until I fill up my machine. I fill it up like every 4 days, 5 days, depending how much work we put. I'm going to put it in the fridge. I'll be back. So as you can see, the ice is basically gone. I'm going to fill some more. And you want to put the ice before you put the water, so that when your machine is filled, you know exactly how much ice you're working with, because the water is already ice cold. And here we work in warm conditions, so I need to put a little bit more ice than I technically would if I was working at 50, 55 Fahrenheit home, which is better. Like the colder the condition you're working, the better. There is no way you can be in t-shirt in your washing room. Like you're gonna be cold, and you're gonna have like 2 or 3 layers of wool to be able to feel comfortable working in that room. It has to be cold not only in a machine. It has to be cold the whole operation until you start pressing. That's where you need heat to be able to use that stickiness characteristic of the resin to make it a piece of ash. And I like that machine because you do all the loading on the back so that your front stay cleaner, there is less chance to contaminate your bag and stuff. And while we do that, I'm gonna empty the other machine. It's a little tricky to work with 2 machines, but when you get the timing, it's okay. It doesn't look like it because we started together. But let's say I'm at my 4th, 5th wash here, and I'm into the 7-minute range, then I can start this one at a shorter time or vice versa, so that you have a loop. Otherwise, when you run and you have to wait 10 minutes, 12 minutes for your spin to be to finish, you lose concentration. When you have two machines and you time yourself well, it's a continuous flow. It's hard almost to keep up. But you need to keep up. It's like if one machine is waiting for you while you're working on the other, it's not good enough. You may as well just work on one machine and put your whole attention to it. One little machine like this, 300 gram a machine, you get an average of, let's say, 10% average, and you run the machine 3 times a day, which is quite possible. That gives you a nice little chunk of ash. Huh? That's 90 grams of ash every day you work. This time I'm gonna put 7 minutes, and I'm gonna go a little bit higher up in power of the vortex. And you're gonna see the difference straight up. So I was in the 300, and now I'm in the 400. Basically, I jump 100 RPM at a time on this machine. On my 30 gallon, actually, I don't go more than 30, 40 RPM at a time. And you can see already there is much more power going on, but it's still quite gentle. And you can hear the sound also. There is very little ice, and the ice is very contained by the metal. That machine uses half the ice I need in that 5 gallon. Okay, so here on this wash, I want to show you how you actually wash contaminant in a bag with contaminant so that you really have an idea of what's going on. And I want to show you how much it takes to really make a mistake. And if you make a mistake, it's only on that wash. You would see how good you can clean it up. And then next time, since you know you made a mistake, you're going to compensate for it. And that's all it takes. Basically, when you know that you're making a mistake, you can learn. You can build up your experience on it. If you know when you make a mistake, you know also when you're doing good. And that's all you need to create that solid foundation to build up experience. And you're going to hear the sound. The sound is really not at all the same. And I'm going to put a little more time than usual too to be really 100% sure that I get contaminant. You can hear that there is like a grrr sound. There is much more happening here. And I'm going to add a little bit more to be on the super safe side. The ice grinds the material, which is the only way to create contaminant, it's to grind the material. So if you put too much ice, you're in a danger of creating contaminant. The more ice, the more contaminant you create. The ice is not a tool, it just helps you to keep the water cold, that's it. And while we are crushing that, I'm going to empty the other machine. And you can see again how clean the water is. I do not smoke, by the way, when I'm working in my workplace. This is a workshop, it's different. You need to keep the place ultra clean. So you need a floor that you can wash. You need walls that you can wash. You need a deep sink, and to be able to keep it sanitary, that's the only way. And to work really in good condition where you're not afraid to overflow and do stuff like that, because it will happen. Okay, I'm starting to have a little bit more green because the buds are starting to break up. We'll look at the bud after. So, if you look in a bag, you can see that I started to break my material. Here you have some part of buds that are not totally broken up. If you worry that there may be some resin left into it, you can put it back in the machine. It's a pretty good solution. And then after, you really again want to rinse that bag thoroughly. This one, even with sticky resin, it's rare when you have to wash it in alcohol every time. But when you work with live resin, yeah. Like when the resin is, let's say, overly sticky, you will have to wash that bag also in alcohol, which takes a lot of time. But again, it's super important that that bag is totally clean because all the resin is going first through that one. Anything locked here, it's lost. We have a little bit more resin in a 160. Normally in a 160, you have resin accumulating for the first 3 wash, 4 wash, hardly after, nothing. Now with the water that is left here, I use that water to do my second sieving, basically. I'm going to twirl the water to help do more separation while I empty the bag. And often when you have contaminant, they show behind the resin. They really basically in the grain of the sieve because the sieve is smaller. So here there is very little cleaning to do. As long as contaminant goes, it's mostly the separation of resin head and any stalk that could have been broken. But I don't see any contamination from the plant material yet. So and now I'm trying to put everything as much as possible in the center of it. And I let the water seep out by itself. I want to show you the bud now in a machine. You can see how it's starting to break up. They are still, a lot of them are still complete, but a lot of them are starting to open up. The more power I'm going to apply, the more they will open up until they're really totally open, and I'm sure I get the resin from every part of it. The tighter the bud, the less resin there is inside because there is not the space for the resin to really form there. That's why when you work with flowers, it's better if you have loose bud. You will collect a lot more resin. So I'm going to put back some ice. Oop. Okay, here you can see the resin is more in the middle, but I am trying to push it even more so. You see how much there is on the side of the wall. Because it's sticky. This one I'm going to have to wash it in alcohol every time. So again, it's the same operation. It's very repetitive. And it's very simple, but because it's so simple, the smallest mistake is obvious. So you need to be to stay really focused very much on what you do. So again, the frisbee trick. When it's really sticky like this, it's nice to try to go under it, under the resin block, so that there is less than that stick to the bag. As you can see, this resin is very, very sticky, which makes it difficult to work with, but which is always a good news. So now, when I'm here, I have the smell. The resin is really smells strong. If I test it, and I can test the smell in a resin, I know that I have locked my terpenes are here. Now the only time I can lose them, it's during my drying, which is actually the most difficult part and the only con of using water. It gives a lot of advantage. You can work with material that is supple so you don't create contaminant, and you can separate the process into the methodology into two processes that you can fine-tune. The only real con, it's the drying, and it's not easy to dry perfectly, and it's majorly important to the final quality of the product. So you try to not leave too much resin on your material so that there is the least lost. Otherwise, all this will go to oil. Then I take back my material. And I add my patchy slowly to the, so that every one of those material hold one machine and every washers of that machine. And every one of those washers, it's a dimension of ripeness. It's the one was really a light shake, the second one is a longer shake, the third one is a longer shake and more brutal one, but you just want to go up by increment. In that machine, your goal is really to keep the ice to a minimum because that's going to really define the power of your vortex and the grinding of the ice. Back to the fridge. So this machine again, I'm gonna give it a tiny bit more of power and a tiny bit more time. And you can see the vortex, like there is much more power applied to it if you want to have a peek at it. By the sound of it, I can add a tiny bit of ice. While you look at that, I'm going to empty the other machine where I applied, I put a lot more ice and run it for a longer time. technically speaking, I should have created contaminant for you to see how it wash. The water looks too clean. I'm going to run it a little longer. I have had workshops where I just cannot make it happen. And other workshops where it's a little bit too easy and it's really super hard to get back to normal. It all depends the strain. Some strains are more resilient, for a better word, than others. So that when you start working with them, you really have to start very, very, very gentle to be sure that you're in a safe zone. But technically speaking, any strain with thicker leaf will have a better endurance to the wall handling than a thin leaf that is much more fragile. The suppleness of the wall is a real gift. Now again, it's all a question of playing safe with the ice. So we will not have, one of the huge disadvantages of that machine is the plugging, which was one of the main problem we had to solve when we did the stainless steel. So there is a non-FDA approved way to unplug, and there is a FDA approved. The FDA approved, when you buy those sprayer fan, they come often in pair, and there is one that is really pointy. You can put it in aperture and put the power that will really unplug it. Otherwise, there is always a simple method. The problem with that setting it gets plugged here. And this is really bad because you see how mixed up it is in the machine? There is not a strong flow. You know that you're not collecting everything. And that was really one of the problems with that machine. So here you're going to see we did some serious work on a bud. You see they start to be really broken up here. Now let's see if we did that cleanly. So again, and this time, because I really have some serious little piece of bud that are open but not quite totally open, I'm going to put it back in the machine to play it safe so that I don't waste anything. The 160 is very clean, so I'm just going to rinse it over the 45. You just move it around so that every pinpoint of water, it's an agitation. And it moves the resin up and down like nothing else. It's really a perfect way to separate the size on the material without damaging the resin head at all. And you always protect your bag. Oh, you see a little bit of green here on the edge, under the resin. Not much of it though. There is that little shade of green, but hardly anything. So by twirling it, normally you chase already most of it away. Very much like doing some gold sieving. And this is in fact your second separation, your second action of sieving. The first one was the water flowing through your bag. And using the spray is actually the third and final separation. And you want the foam to be exactly the same color than the resin. You can see how much agitation, all that droplet going up and down, and all that foam forming. There is a lot happening, but it's all super gentle. And then I chase it along the wall. And anything that's not the size goes through the mesh of the tool, of the sieve, of the bag. The bag is really not something you just collect in. The bag is really actually what is the second half of sieving. That's why I dislike the word extraction, because as I mentioned at the beginning of the workshop, if you don't know that you're sieving and you don't know the definition of the word sieving, then it's a serious handicap, because that's exactly what you do. So I take the minimum water. There's going to be a huge difference from one party to the other on this one, because normally it takes me 2 steps to get to that power. It's not much, but you see how fast the alcohol is changing color? It adds up very, very fast. If you have done sandcastle and you have spent time on the beach doing sand structure, it's going to be easy to do the patty. It seems that people who have not spent time on the beach have problem making nice patty. And it's quite important that your patty are well made and in the same thickness as much as possible to facilitate the drying in a freeze dryer. And before you ask, I use Harvest Right, the scientific freeze dryer of Harvest Right. HarvestRight.com. One word. Okay. So you see here, the second patty is slightly bigger than the first one, but hardly, because I hardly take more time and especially more power. Here, because I pushed it so much, you're going to see a huge difference in the size of the patty, which is not common. Normally, it would take me 2 or 3 steps to get there. So every patty is going to get slowly bigger and bigger, and then it's going to be slowly coming down in size. And I wash my trim somewhere between 7 to 12 times, depending on many things, mostly the genetic. And towards the end, you know that you're reaching the end where the amount is really getting very small, or when you need to agitate so much that you're creating contaminant, that there is green coming into your mix. Then you know that you're at the end of your wash, that you can stop and do your cleaning and go to the next one. The amount of time that you wash is depending on, first, literally, it's depending on you, on the choice you take when you work the stream. Do you want to just have it all fast, or do you want really to have all those different dimensions of ripeness that have a uniqueness in it, and you create something a little different? Would be like, let's say when you compare to fruit, if I want to make a tart, I'm going to pick up the ripest fruit. If I want to make a juice, I like a little tartness into it. I wouldn't pick only the ripest fruit to make the juice. So it's like it really depends a lot on the taste, and everyone also a different ratio of terpene and cannabinoid. And sometimes to a point that it's even different cannabinoid, because they create each other, like I explained in the workshop this morning. So it really depends on what you want. When you work with fine resin, you want really to have all those dimensions and choose into it. If you want to something that is going to be used for edible, or where you want to, you don't have that need of ultimate quality, you can cut down the time by making every wash stronger, and in the case of that small machine, to make the wash longer. In the case of the stainless steel, longer and stronger. It's really a choice that you have to take at the beginning, and it depends really much about your type of production. For me, it's always small increment, as small as possible sometimes. For most people, it would be bigger increment because they don't look at the ripeness of the melt or ripeness of the resin the way I do. They look at it in the size in the bag. So their approach to washing is very much different than me. You just want to shake. It is quite important to have a pump in your bucket. It's handling that much water by hand. It's quite the exercise. The next wash, instead of just putting 50 or 100 RPM more and a minute or two, I'm gonna add 4 or 5 minutes, and at least 2 or 3 times the power I would normally apply. And you'll see how much more dimension you get, and often you see it in the color of the resin, especially when you dry and press. And then you're going to see a huge difference in the size of the patty. I'm going to let my assistant fill up the ice and the next load. And like I say, I'm gonna keep the same amount of ice I would, because I don't want to break down my material. I just want to show you how many dimensions, how much you can take at a time when you apply more time and more power. And this one, the next run, I'm going to try to break it up a little bit more than what I did last time. I'm afraid it's going to be difficult. Which actually show you that because I actually put a very minimum amount of trim in a machine, when you have the minimum amount of trim in the machine, it's very difficult to bust it. And in this case, less is more. If you put less trim here, you have more power and more current coming from the vortex, which shake off the resin head easier. You have less of a mass of material that could hold the resin head when they break away and fall down. And it's very, very difficult to make a mistake and mix up your ratio to a point where you literally crush your material. It's like when you have so little trim, you would have to put such an amount of ice in it for it to become a crushing power that there is very little people who would go to that level before they fill up. It's obvious. Okay, and this time I'm going to run it for a very long time. I'm going to run it for 15 minutes, which I hardly ever do. I start at 2 minutes, and then I go by increment of 1 minute with that small machine. Maximum 2 minutes when I feel that my material can take the time, like this one, for example. So I'm going to run the machine for 10 minutes. And I'm going to put a lot of power here. If you want to have a peak inside,
there is a strong power of agitation here.
And here, not only you have a vortex, but you have a vortex that folds over each other. So when the current folds like this, it has even more power to break away those resin heads from the stock. It's very much like if you lay down in a river when you feel the current massaging you, that's basically what's happening to the free-floating leaf. They're into the middle of that current that is gentle, but strong enough to really take off those resin heads that are made to fall by nature. You see the difference between the amount of green I have here and what I had here. It's very little. I have not broken my bud yet. It holds a little part, a lot of air, a lot of little part of the bud, but no real open bud yet. So again, I want to rinse that well. I just wanted to break up that chunk that was forming because the resin is quite sticky to be sure that nothing was inside. And again, that little water that I have here, I'm going to use it for my second sieving. It's super clean. When your ratio is good, life is very simple. When you have too much material and too much trim that you have to wash in your bag, you waste a lot of time because you put too much material. To get more, you're going to waste a lot of time. it's not going to be quite as clean, and you're going to waste a lot of water cleaning in a bag. The resin also is getting slowly lighter. If you, I don't know if you see it. You'll see it in a bag when I put the patty next to each other. The ripest trichon are the darkest amber. And then when you go down the line, the dimension of ripeness, slowly those trichon are going to go to the lighter amber color and to the milky color. You have to clean your knife, otherwise you start buttering it on a sieve, and it goes deep into the perforation. You can't get that anymore. It is much easier to work with indica type genetic because the resin is much drier. You need to press to get the resin out. You can see how little material is coming down also. That's mostly because of the style of drain I have. The 160. again to chase any contaminant with the weight of the water that goes through. And I like to spread the resin all over the bag so that when I wash with the water, I do even more separation. Just pushing it a little bit more toward the center, so I waste as little as possible. And now I will start the machine again with a longer time and a little bit more power. And the same with that one. I literally shake my tree a little bit harder and a little bit longer for this machine, or just a little bit longer with my plastic machine, so that slowly I dislodge different level of ripeness of all the resin that is on a plant. And you know when it's finished when you have very little coming down anymore. And if you look with the macro picture of the bud before, and you look at the bud after, there is very, very little resin head that is left. You have all the stock, but there is basically no resin head left, like under 1% most certainly. So you have a lot more green in this one, and at that level I'm pretty sure it's all been washed. The trim makes for a potent fertilizer. Actually, we're even planning to put back the trim where from the plant where they have been grown, for the next generation of plant to grow into the compost of the precedent generation, which we hardly do here. A quick rinse on my 160. Do you see the green now? So that's the contaminant. Because finally I had enough ice and I push it to the 15-minute level so that I could create it. You see that green on the wall of the bag compared to some of the resin that is a light cream amber? It's quite obvious. So this is contaminant. And by doing that motion, already you get rid of a lot of it. You see? It's already mostly gone. Just by twirling like this. And now I'm going to work hard with my water to be really sure that I do not leave any contaminant there. So you can have an idea of how powerful a tool it is to use a bag as a sieve and not as a collecting tool. You really can use the power of the water to separate really strongly everything and keep only the resin in your bag. On this machine, on this wash, I'm not afraid to apply more power and a longer time because my resin is so clean. In this one, because I had a little contaminant, I'm a little bit more careful, so I have less ice and the time is going to be a little shorter to make sure that I don't get those contaminants the next time. While we do that, I'm going to collect the resin, and you're going to start seeing a difference between the patty. You want a lot of alcohol to clean your bag. This is a perfect example that cured resin can stay as sticky as live resin. And it's very much a characteristic of the resin. Okay, and I'm gonna pick up the small machine bag also, so that you're gonna see another one next to this. And you're going to see this one, there is very little difference between the first one and the precedent one and this one, because I had too much ice in this one. And when you have a lot of ice, the power of the vortex is much diminished, so that you shake a lot less. That's why less is more when you make ice water in this machine and you use a vortex, especially when you cannot control the power of your vortex. You see the difference? And that's not only because there is more than one dimension here, but it's possibly, if I have two dimensions here, that would be a normal rate of growth. But it shows when you put a longer time and there is a maximum condition for the machine, you get a lot more.